Welcome, welcome, welcome. This
Yes.
is the Second Opinion Sports Medicine Podcast. I'm Dr. Dhokal,
I'm Dr. Glass.
and we are here on September the 11th in San Diego. Man, I was in school with you when September 11th,
Yeah.
the tragedy happened.
Yeah.
20 plus years ago.
Yeah, that was a trip.
Yeah.
I remember. I'm sure like everybody says, do you remember
Sure,
where you
sure.
were? It's mics I'm not used to already. Yeah, but I remember getting ready and listening to Howard Stern and in the mornings and getting ready, and then him talking about it. And he he's a comedian, so he would always, be joking about stuff, but you could tell in his tone of voice. And then, it was before really the days of the internet and social media like we have it now, so it wasn't really
It was different
something.
then.
Yeah, we had to really kind of figure out what was going on, listening to the news, channels. I remember driving in and then getting on there, and that was, it's a chiropractic college, people from all over the country, all over the world, and we had friends from New York, and I remember Palmer setting up phone lines for everybody from the East Coast, and it was just surreal. Yeah, right.
It was an exam day. I do remember being there early and studying, and then went up to the dean's office and we were watching, things unfolding on TV, which, to your point, it was only 20 some years ago, but nowadays I feel like people would be on their phone gathering information off Twitter or X. And, there's a bunch of different ways to get news, but it was still, we're not talking black and white TV. It was 2002,
Right.
if I recall. So, but it was just a little different, 2001.
Yeah. So it was, it was different times for sure. And I just remember it was just the feeling of being on campus and just
It was heavy.
and the uncertainty of what was going on.
Sure.
Feeling for we were on the West Coast, so we felt safer, right? But then you had your friends that didn't know what was going on with their families and friends, and it just kind of then it started hitting home really quick. When you started seeing other places and other things being affected,
It changed life for sure.
yeah, for
It
sure,
definitely changed life.
yeah. So, and in the sporting world, kind of interesting. Not that. But we are a sports podcast, so, but it did affect how sports were played at that time too. And they put a hold on the games and everything. And
I would say sports was something that helped kind of unite the country as well in a weird way. In certain instances, there was, a lot of obviously patriotism. But I think the Patriots won the Super Bowl that year. There was just some moments that I remember at sporting events. The first game that was, televised or that they played afterwards. It felt like people were ready to try to get back to some normalcy after a tragedy, after people lost lives. And, like you said, there was a lot of confusion and uncertainty then,
Yeah, they postponed. Yeah, Major League Baseball postponed. Yeah, all sports postponed that next week, until I think the 16th or the 17th. So a whole week, went by. No sporting, they just need to figure out, especially in New York, they were using the stadiums as, places for the first responders and families to go and to figure out everything. So, But talking about moments, right? New York first game for a New York game, Mike Piazza hit a home run, which was big to win the game, which for the New Yorkers was a big deal, right?
Yeah.
For the Mets, so that was kind of
That's
exciting.
a good memory because I don't remember that particular moment.
Yeah.
But
that's one of those emotional moments, for the New Yorkers, for Americans, So anyways, so moments like that, and NFL got, I don't know if you remember this too, but NFL got postponed all those Sunday games.
Right.
All those Sunday games, Monday Night Football got postponed a whole week, right? So Major League Baseball, they can continue playing throughout the week, on a daily basis after taking that first week off. But football had to wait till what would be the 22nd, 23rd to start back up. And then you take all those teams, and they had to postpone it till the following season or following week, and then all the
Everything
games
got pushed.
All the games that got missed, they didn't just push them them back. They took them and put them at the end of the season to make up the playoff games.
I got you.
And I found an interesting stat I didn't realize, but that's why the Super Bowl is actually played now in the first Sunday of February because of 9/11. Yeah, gotcha. So it's kind of an interesting fact. Didn't realize now that we're in NFL season, and didn't realize that timeline of everything.
Yeah, it used to always be January, right? Now we're used to. Yeah. I even said something the other day. I hope you win your last game, and I hope it's in February.
Right.
Yeah.
So which it didn't always be like that. Yeah.
So well, I've known you a long time, bud.
Yeah.
Since
when we put it
back
in
school days, there's people who are in their mid-20s that they don't even have a memory of that, really.
Right.
So,
we started school January 2000.
Yep.
Yeah. It's crazy.
I was like, we're going to start school, or Y2K is going to hit, and
exactly.
We're not going to be able to pull cash. Computers are going to crash, and I'll just go back to farming, I guess.
Yep. I remember it was my birthday, January 10th, 2000. Right? So I always remember that. Yeah.
Man, the start of a journey.
Yeah.
Let me ask you some football-related things.
Yes, sir.
This weekend, start of week 1 of the NFL season, we had a game on Thursday. We both mispredicted the winner of that game.
I think the whole world did.
Yeah, nobody expected the Lions to win, except maybe
did,
Detroit, perhaps. Right. Any major injuries jump out to you in that game?
In that game, I don't know. None.
It started off relatively good.
Okay.
It was my point is, we had the Thursday night game, and there was a couple people that missed a few plays, but nothing that is as significant as the Sunday games and now the Monday games. And so as I was preparing for this week's podcast, I had 2 questions in my mind. One was, what was the most impactful injury of the week? And what was the most serious injury of the week? And sometimes those can be different.
Yeah.
Up until today, it's Monday.
Yeah.
What had you down? What did you have down for the most impactful injury? The one that was going to maybe throw off the season or maybe a few weeks for a team.
Yeah, and impactful could be a number of different things, right? Sure. So depending on what we're looking at, and part of our research is we do look through the injury reports each day. So in scouring through it, I saw the 3. I picked out 3 impactful ones that I thought, and they happen to all be tackles, offensive tackles, because that's going to...
Shocking.
Right? Yeah, so I kind of gravitated towards that, right? But 2, especially left tackles, right? That's, in my opinion, most impactful for a team, for an offense for sure, having that blind side, you can't go down. So the New York Giants, Andrew Thomas, left tackle, he went out. It was kind of a bummer. I mean, that game was a blowout.
Well, it was 40-0 Dallas, right? So I didn't watch the whole game.
Yeah.
Where did he? Do you know where he got hurt?
Was it Dallas? Who won that? It was 40-0.
40-0
Dallas won it.
Whooped up on the Giants in New York. It was embarrassing. They need to check themselves.
Okay, I thought it was the opposite.
No, Dallas wrecked them.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
I was shocked because I thought in New York, I thought the Giants were going to come to play. They looked good last year. I thought they were going to give them a heavy dose of Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I'm not a big Dallas believer. I feel like Dak is I know nothing, so disclaimer. But my opinion is that Dak isn't an elite quarterback. And that term's thrown around. What I mean by that is some quarterbacks carry teams and some quarterbacks manage teams. And I think he's more of a team manager than like the breakout player that like maybe Mahomes or Josh Allen perhaps is, right?
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is I expected it to be a somewhat close game. I didn't think Dallas was going to come with the heat. And their defense scored a few touchdowns, but still 40-0.
Yeah.
You get like you have to go home and watch tape and check yourself and ask yourself what happened.
Yeah.
A
shutout
at home.
Yeah, that's not a good way to start a season. That's not a good time.
Anyway.
Yeah, 40-0. Yeah, something went wrong. So, he goes down on a field goal.
Maybe that's what it was. So maybe it was most impactful.
Hamstring on a field goal, right? So on that.
So he's not pass protecting, but field goal
protection, which I don't even know why he's out there, to be honest. So
starting left tackle.
Yeah, I don't understand that. So unless they had some other play, written up or anything, but yeah, so that was one of the most
So
impactful.
he's a few weeks because of a hamstring, typically, depending on severity.
Yeah, especially for the left tackle, you gotta, especially with pass protection, gotta back up.
Yeah.
I don't know which hamstring it was, but still, either way, those guys, those linemen's legs. I remember working on a couple, 49ers, and I remember asking how big his leg was, and it was 36 inches.
Yeah.
One of his quads was 36 inches.
That's my waist.
Right.
That's bigger than my waist.
So put two of those together, right? These are big legs. So that's a big hamstring and big quad, right? So yeah, you strain that, and you're having to block 300 plus 400, 300 to 400 pound guys coming at you trying to kill your quarterback. You have a hamstring strain is not just a little thing, right? So that's impactful. Another Ronnie Stanley on Baltimore's left tackle as well, knee injuries. So interesting stat with that I read up on him a little. He's a 7-year veteran. Okay, he's yet to play a full season. Isn't that crazy?
That's terrible.
Yeah, that's terrible to hear. But that just goes to show that it's not easy. It's not easy.
Me, especially now at 17 weeks. That's a lot of weeks to stack together. It's a long preseason. It's just a long year, and they're big men. And so with big men come big muscles, come big injuries, come big pulls, come big sprains.
Yep.
That's unfortunate for him. That's too bad.
So we went from big muscles, right? Yeah. And then this other tackle, left tackle for Seattle, Charles Cross, he sprained his toe.
Okay.
And had to be carted off.
Carted off.
Yes. So you go from a big
I'm gonna tell you something, Dustin. I'm only a quarterback, but I'm not getting carted off because of it.
So that was I hope that did not happen. Yeah. But for them to report that, again, I didn't see the game, but for them to report that,
no, it's serious.
Yeah. Sure. And so how would you treat? So let's talk about it. You go from a big hamstring on the 36-inch quad and hamstring leg.
Right.
How do you go about doing soft tissue on something like that?
I mean, if it just happened and I'm seeing him tomorrow or tonight, then it's like let's maybe even wait a day and see how this settles out. Where's the swelling? What's the damage? If it requires imaging of some sort, we're getting that done ASAP before we do anything invasive or hands-on. You obviously don't want to make anything worse. Assuming that there's no, the imaging is negative and you can proceed forward, it's a pull of a standard nature, grade 1 or 2 or something, then normally I just go through my palpation skills, right? So sometimes I tell patients I almost have like a photographic memory with my hands. And what I mean by that is if I work on you today, I remember what that felt like, weirdly as that sounds, the next day, right? So I can kind of have a mental comparison. So presumably I've worked on this person before. I know what normal is and now it's pulled. And so based on that difference and that swelling and the pain tolerance, then I would do all the normal things, whether it was, obviously rest and ice if there's inflammation there. But I really believe in like flushing the area out, even if it's a light flush, and that can be with like PEMF or Beamer mat. It doesn't have to be manual kind of flushing out. Even something like a hyperbaric chamber I think is helpful. But I like to get hands-on, get a feel for the tissue and the restriction or the weakness, and then proceed forward, cautiously the first couple days. With the pull, you're not solving everything anyways. You're not getting them back the following Sunday, so I keep that in mind as well. Sometimes we get a little aggressive if it's on a Sunday and we're trying to play that following Sunday.
Correct.
Sometimes, as you know, it's apparent like, okay, we're going to miss some games here.
Yeah.
So let's head in a direction prudently.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. You kind of assess the situation, and number one key for me is to drop the inflammation, right? Inflammation leads to instability and loss of function, especially when we're talking joints.
Say that again.
So inflammation leads to instability and loss of function, right? So for me, it always starts there with anything we're doing, and specifically with a joint, right? So so we go from a big old hamstring strain, where we want to get the inflammation down, but then we also want to take that tissue, which we assume has been strained and torn a little. If it's a grade 2, grade 1 will be just little micro pulling, right? Mm-hmm. Grade 2 will be a little more tearing, where you get a little more bruising and more swelling. And so we want to get those tissues to start mending sooner, right, than healing, later. Yeah. So let's get the inflammation down. Now, a lot of people say, well, no, inflammation starts the healing process and you need that inflammation in there. I don't disagree, but I don't want the excess, right?
Correct.
So what I tell my patients is, like, a lot of times, instead of, like, if they're in a lot of pain, a lot of bruising, we're going to ice, directly on or with a layer of towel to kind of cut that pain, right, to cut that pain cycle. Right. But if it's not terribly painful, I just want to cool the area down and bring the blood vessels back to normal, not constricted, because I want that blood flow. Sure. I just don't want that excess blood flow. So that's kind of where we start. Let's get it down. 15 minutes on, 30 minutes off, 15 minutes on again to kind of use that contrast. When it's acute like that, I don't add heat for our contrast. I let the body's natural temperature heat it up. Room temperature, body temperature, because it's already inflamed and heated. Sure. So I'm going to use that to our advantage. So I'm going to cool it down, constrict those blood vessels down to normal, not constricted to lose blood flow and oxygen. Right. So we're going to cool the area down. 15 minutes, no more, and then let it off for a half hour, let the blood come back in. That's when all the good properties are going to come in, start healing that tissue, and then we're going to bring it back down with another session of 15 minutes to cool it down again. So 15 on, 30 off, 15 on again, kind of get that pumping action. Yep. And that's what I'm going to do right away. And I do that even longer than the 48, 72 hours. That's textbook, right? As long as there's inflammation in an area, we got to keep it down. And as long as we're not doing the constricting ice, there's nothing wrong with it, in my opinion. So that's for muscle. Go to a joint. Okay, so how would it be different? Well, let me go back with your soft tissue techniques. Right, you got this big leg of a lineman. Sure, and then how would the treatment, or would it be different for a say
like a wide receiver or something?
No, let's go so we could do that. Okay. Or we could go a 45-year-old mom, stay-at-home mom running marathons or running the 5K, right? Sure. Who's athletic, who runs on a regular basis, everything. She's not a sit-at-home, she's an active stay-at-home mom. Sure. And, fit, but lot smaller, the muscle tone's different, right? So, but they both pulled their hamstring, right? Yeah. So would that look different as far as your tissue technique approach go, or is it the same? So I know, I kind of know how this goes, but
probably the same steps, just modified, right? So maybe tapered down in intensity and pressure, but I also think about what was a mechanism of injury, right? So if you're a football player, probably some aggressive force, you're trying to block somebody, they pushed you back, maybe. If you're a marathon runner, maybe just overuse, something along those lines, some tension points that lead to a pull. But also, I would look at it as being maybe a little easier to get somebody who's running marathons back to 100% than someone who's dealing with like aggressive contact and resistance force, right? I think there's more chance of injury to the athlete population. So not so much older or younger, male or female, just like activity-wise. The marathon is a little more low intensity, longer interval. Football is the opposite, right? High intensity, short interval. So in that respect, I think it'd be easier for the stay-at-home mom to answer your question. But as far as what to do, I think basically the same steps. I try to tell most of my patients, like, hey, I'm going to treat you just like I would any of my athletes or, anybody else who's trying to return to play, right. Or activity. I had somebody a couple years ago, I just thought of him right now. He was a garbage person, a garbage man. And he's like, man, I need to be able to I need to be agile. I need to jump to the back of the truck and I hop off. And I actually asked him, how high? And he's like, dude, like your chair, doc. And I'm like, that's high. That's 18, 24 inches. So imagine somebody who's in their 50s who's jumping 2 feet repeatedly and then oftentimes stepping onto something and sometimes moving. And so you got to have a level of athleticism, right? So I said, hey, man, I'm going to treat you like one of my athletes. And you tell me what your ceiling is, or if you're redlining, or if you feel like this is a little too much.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you get to know your patients, you know. So I would push them as much as they seem to be able to take it, I think, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you mentioned that you would treat them just like one of your athletes, right? How many times, and I know the answer to this too, because we have the same patient base, but I get calls like, do you treat non-athletes? Like, you know, so
I treat humans.
Yeah, right. I say, as long as you have a pulse and I can get to the area, pulse and spine, that's my criteria, right? So, but yeah, it's funny because our niche is, you know, is athletes and performance care and, you know, restoring people, getting them back. But I say, hey, this is a sport of life, right?
Yeah.
So regardless whether you're, you know, whatever you're doing, stay-at-home mom, you know, having to shuffle 3 kids around, or, you know, playing on Sunday. Yeah. So let's get this done, and let's maximize your full potential, whatever that is and whatever the need is. We're going to maximize, make sure you can fall and tumble and get up and, you know, move on. And I had a lady in today, not to interrupt, but, you know, she just got back from a vacation, and she's been sedentary since the pandemic.
Gotcha.
And her and her husband went on vacation and did a lot of hiking. Both of them, within 2 days, feet were wrecked, really in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
They just hadn't conditioned themselves for a while. And so she came back. She's all, I need to change something. I'm like, yeah, you know, if there's an emergency at the mall or the supermarket and you have to run out, we need to make sure you can do that. If you stumble, we need to get you up. You know, so it's the sport of life. So that's what I say.
Sport of life,
right.
Man. Yeah. So we got to be. I just read something this week. I'm always trying to like read something that's interesting or you know, new that's out. And this isn't really, I'm going to share with you sometimes some facts that aren't mind-blowing to you, but it seems to be like new science, you know. It's like, lo and behold, exercise is good for you and breaking steady, you know. It's like I seem to come across those just as much. But the one thing I saw this week was about a percentage of 70-year-olds who can run a mile. And it was like under 5%, if I remember correctly. And that kind of made me pause for a second. I mean, look, I'm in my 40s, right? Like 70 doesn't seem around the corner, but it doesn't seem forever away. No. I mean, as long as I've known you 20 plus years, you add that, it's like you're approaching it, you know? So I was thinking, damn, I want to be able to run when I'm 70. I want to be able to run a mile when I'm 70. Yeah. And then my next thought was, hey, bro, like you haven't run this year. Right. So like, if you haven't run this year, how do you expect to? So it made me contemplate, like, what do I want to be able to do in a few decades, and what do I need to be doing today? Yeah. And that struck up a conversation with my patients that day about how do you want to be when you're 70? Right. And if you changed nothing from here on out, would you be there? And man, most people said no. Right. And me included. Right. Right. And so, yeah, I think it's just like small things over a long period of time matter. And I thought that was shocking. Only 5. I think that's piss poor. That's like disappointing. Yeah, that is. And 70 to me is not that old. I mean, there's a lot of life, you know, too, and I know people in their 60s, 70s, 80s feel their age and feel, but you know, like science is changing, man. Yeah, and we know better.
And I have people in their 80s that are like, I wish I was 70 again. Yeah, you know, and it's all about perspective, right? Because at the age, like, I wish I was 50 or 30 again. You know, I wish you know, but at that time I was crippled and like hobbling and not doing so good at 30, 40, you know, years old. What's up?
I'm just laughing because I had somebody today come in. I'm not gonna throw him under the bus, but he's 27 and he said he was feeling old. Oh yeah. And I was like, 27 is not old, but
you collect his copay and tell him to get out. But yeah. So, but part of me hears 5%. So that means there's 5% of the population that are 70 that are doing it. Yeah. So I don't want to be like everybody else, right? So I want to be better than 95% of everybody, right? So so that's when you don't want to be average. You don't want to be the norm, right? So you want to be better.
Yeah, so you got to do something that most people aren't doing.
Yeah, and you know, you see on social media these, you know, senior citizens running track, right? Doing, you know, track meets and stuff. Well, why can they do it and others can't? It was a decision at some point. They're hurting. Their joints are hurting. Their muscles are tight and achy. They have trouble getting in and out of bed. But they made a decision at some point in their life. And a lot of my patients, usually it comes down to be like, I watched my parents suffer. I don't want to be like that. So I'm going to be different. And that's usually the catalyst for a lot of these.
Yeah.
But then there's others that say, well, that's how my parents were, so I guess that's how I'm going to be. And I'm like, man, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
It's a decision and it's a movement thing. Yeah, there's some genetics that play into it, but not based on, you can change that, the outcome, regardless of genetics, because they move different. Their lifestyle was different. Their circumstances were different. So, figure it out on your own. But yeah, like you said, how do you want, I read a quote along the same thing that said, if you want to be a badass in your 60s, 70s, 80s, it starts being a badass in your 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So like you said, like you just did a self-analysis, like self-audit and say, well, dude, you haven't run. I thought about that the other day. I actually looked up some things. I'm like, man, one of the things we recommended was like start sprinting, right? Start doing some sprints. Okay. Well, a sprint to me is going to be different for you, which is going to be different than your wide receiver.
Also, if you haven't done anything, how about start with walking, then go to jogging. Don't just one day on a Tuesday decide I'm going to sprint.
Right.
Then you're going to end up with this hamstring pull that we just talked about.
Right. Exactly. So to your point. Yeah. So let's get back on track and talk one last thing on the hamstring versus toe, right?
Sure.
So now we have a toe joint. Both athletes are out. Both are left tackles. Both, it's just important to get back into the game.
Yep.
But the treatment's going to be a little different. How's that toe different? Obviously soft tissue is the same, but joint versus muscle, that's what I'm kind of looking at. Like, how do we attack the joint for treatment?
So that's a great question. I mean, again, it depends. It sounds like it's just a toe and like you should be able to play through it. You have 9 others, especially if it's your big toe. Yeah. And in the left tackle position, you're doing a lot of like rotational movement, kind of lateral sidestepping. You're on the balls of your feet a lot as you're backing up or pushing. And so that joint pain, if it's turf toe or, it's a jam toe even, you have inflammation there, you're not going to be able to put pressure on it.
Right.
And so basically you're non-effective at this point. And you're a liability because somebody's going to smash your franchise quarterback. All it takes is one play. And so the hamstring, I feel like, is more a tolerance to pain. Not that the joint isn't as well, but I mean, I could see both limiting you to where you're not being able to play. As far as the treatment goes, it's a little easier to treat soft tissue. With the joint, I feel like there's just a natural healing time to it. But I would do everything from probably PEMF and taping it the best you could. Unless it's fractured or something, if it's a bone bruise, if it's turf toe, it's just rest. It's
a crappy injury in my opinion, especially that big toe or any of the toes down there, because with the hamstring, we can leukotape, kinesiotape, we can cinch it down, limit some of the range of motion. You can get away with losing a little range of motion with the big muscle like that, and wrap it up with compression sleeves and compression shorts and pants, and you can make it feel better, like a big old hug on that muscle, right? That joint, you lock that joint up. You can't push off, you can't dig in, because now you've made a joint that's supposed to be mobile, and you've locked that up. It's going to affect the whole chain all the way up.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Because you lock that out, a joint that's supposed to be mobile, the next joint that's supposed to be stable has to take up the motion. So now a stable joint has to become more mobile, and then you're just flip-flopping, right? Yeah. So it's a big problem. That big toe, to me, is worse than the hamstring for that guy. And so I hope it's not bad. I hope, a little laser, a little PMF, a lot of analgesic. Laser, unbelievable.
The other thing that I didn't mention is doing what's called like a foot bath with the ARP wave. That's really effective because
explain that. What do you mean?
So you can use this device called the ARP wave, where you put these, basically it looks like E-stem pads,
right,
and you run current through the muscle at different intensities, and it helps to increase blood flow. It helps to build strength in muscles because it contracts the muscles rapidly and intensely, right?
Right.
There's a way that you can do hands and feet called like a hand bath or a foot bath. You submerge the hands or submerge the feet. You do like a scan is what it's called, to know where to place one of the pads. But typically I'll put one like on the VMO of the quad, and then like the bottom of the heel, and then we turn the current up a little bit. Because you're submerged, it affects your whole foot. So if you have plantar fasciitis, if you have diabetic neuropathy, I've had really good results with. What it'll do is it'll curl the toes, curl the feet. It'll feel like a cramp. And I ask the client or the patient or the athlete to try to relax through that. And that gets you some involuntary joint contraction or joint motion. And then you work to release that. For soft tissue stuff, for nerve stuff, it seems to be pretty effective. Mm-hmm. Better than most things that I've found manually, you know? So I don't know if that would solve the issue, but I would start there and see if that helps. You know, I think laser's awesome. That's a great suggestion.
I wasn't aware. I haven't seen it where you can get those electrodes wet like that, submerge them. So that's interesting. I hadn't heard that technique.
I did it on a wide receiver last year who had like really a toe problem, to be honest, but it was like also he had some plantar fascia issues. To be quite honest, it was a cleat issue. He was with one brand, and I don't know if that cleat was more uncomfortable than the other cleat. I won't say which company, but he ended up switching because it was so uncomfortable. And I was tripping that. I was like, this company's not making you a custom shoe?
Right.
Like, he's not a nobody. Like, you would think that this person would get a shoe made, you know? And I guess they're like, pick the shoes that we have. And for his foot, it was uncomfortable. Getting to the point, though, we did the ARP Wave bath on him for the foot. And it helped the plantar fasciitis, but it didn't help the joint pain so much in that instance, you know?
Yeah.
That was a rest problem, you know? That was a rest problem. He changed the cause, which was the cleat. There was, you know, the cleats have those, the cleats, the spikes at the bottom, and they sit at certain positions. And so whatever the foundation, the contact point, it was just hitting him in the wrong place. A lot of my football players, as you probably see a lot of dancers I know, and you see a lot of other athletes, basketball players as well. Folks, everyone's feet are jacked up, you know? And so the way that his foot was a little bit out of neutral, I'll say. And yeah, for that particular joint issue, it was a change of what the cause was, which was the cleat. So he changed brands. And then a little bit of rest. It was probably just taking the actual causative issue, which was the pressure point of the cleat of the other brand, you know?
Mentioning feet, right? One of the gems I learned along the way, especially with hockey and with the dancers, was something called foot yoga.
Okay.
It's basically a move. I think Foot Collective. I think I got it from Foot Collective. Don't quote me on that. I don't know if you know those guys, but that's a pretty great site to check out all things feet. But they have all kinds of great protocols. But anyways, you take the foot, and the reason I think it's a gem, and you think it's not a big deal, but most of my patients that I introduce it to have a lot of trouble to do it. But basically, if this is your foot, I'm showing my hand, I'm going to take the other hand or foot. I'm going to take the foot and the hand, and take my hand and interlace it between the toes, right? And stretch those lumbricals and the dorsal interossei and try to get, and you start up top and you try to wedge them all the way down.
Sure.
Most people cannot get their fingers down to the base of their toes like that. And then from there, you flex and extend, twist, side to side, rotate. We usually do 3 to 5 each way, but have them work on that to get those joints more mobile and to stretch those muscles in between. And it's surprising how many people can't do it. But once they start doing it on a regular, it does a couple of things. One, you get the mobility in there. And two, typically we tell them, hey, put some lotion on, you know, and start getting movement in there. You got 26 little bones in your feet. You got to get them all moving and mobile, get the blood flow going. And, you know, it's kind of a nice thing for them to start doing to take care of their, you know, feet. And it doesn't take very long. And if they can get in the habit of doing it, it does make a difference. So,
important.
Yeah.
Side question, when's the last time you got a pedicure?
I've never had a pedicure or a manicure, but I can tell you.
You told me earlier today, too, you've never had a massage, and I'm going to change that by the end of the season. Why are you bringing that up
on camera, man?
I'm telling you,
that's
bro.
brutal.
That's
like, okay.
My man.
Next,
I'm hooking you up.
Right? Okay, so.
The reason I ask you, though, is because you can get these little like toe separators.
Okay,
You get your nails done, and so I actually had a couple of my athletes wear those.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to stick my fingers between their toes for too long. So I said, hey, I know your wife goes and gets manicure, pedicures, have her get one of these little foam separators, and that's effective as well.
Yeah. Talk about manicure. Pedicure. Pro athlete, it's very common.
Yeah,
like
of course.
especially in like basketball and
Sure.
yeah. Cuz
Go get pampered.
Well, yeah, one, two though with the foot fungus is crazy. That's
yeah.
what people don't realize, and putting polish on those too helps keep the cracks and the fungus down.
Yeah.
So you'll see a lot of athletes with like black or white polish on their, like, what is up
Yeah.
with this? But it actually has to do with the fungus for a lot of
To
them.
keep it off.
Not all of them. I don't want to say now everybody's
sure.
going to be looking at people's toes thinking they have
Right.
fungus, but yeah, besides the feel good part, a lot of times it is a other issue.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Has nothing to do with feet.
Okay, good.
Are you okay with that?
Get off the feet, yeah.
Okay. We've gone like 30 some odd minutes, and you mentioned some of the most impactful injuries of the week.
Yeah. Did you have any?
I had a couple, yeah. At first, one was a lineman as well. The Browns lineman, Jack Conklin is his name.
Yeah.
Sorry, Conklin. He tore his ACL, so he's the right tackle for the Browns. He's out for the year. Those offensive linemen are so important and so critical to the success of the team. That's why I was interested in seeing how the Jets play against the Bills today for Monday Night Football. We're recording. It's Monday evening. There's Monday Night Football going on as we speak. And my question was about the offensive line of the Jets and would they hold up against the Bills' defense. That's what I was curious about. So seeing another lineman, an ACL injury for the Browns, that was unfortunate. There was a few other injuries that I saw. I watched the 49er Pittsburgh Steelers game. Wide receiver Deontay Johnson pulled his hamstring, speaking of hamstrings. Non-contact injury, caught a pass, made a move.
You want to take that?
Fell down. No, it's all good. And so that was one of those non-contact injuries where you're like, man, he didn't even get tackled really. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
Hopefully he's not out for too long. Another running back with another hamstring, Aaron Jones, running back for the Packers. He went out. That doesn't look as serious. But, multiple hamstring injuries in week one. The most significant one, well, there's an interesting one. There was a lung injury. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, so that's the one I was just going to bring up.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that one. So
Yeah.
Jalen Petrie.
Petrie.
So he's on the Texans-Ravens. I was kind of keeping track of that game for fantasy implications.
Yeah.
I don't want to bore the audience, but one of my old clients used to be on the Texans last year on the defensive side. He's since moved on, but I've gotten to know a couple of guys on that side, and so I was concerned when I saw that he got hurt. I don't know him personally, but a lung injury. What did you see? What did you hear?
Yeah, I didn't see it. Just look. I watched just did some review, but basically went in for a sack. He's a safety. Went in for a sack on who's the Lamar Jackson, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Correct,
and then made a collision.
He took a knee to the chest or something.
Was it
like
a knee?
that,
That's what I didn't see. And then they, came out, and then he reportedly was coughing up blood, so they took him for immediate, imaging and to make sure nothing more. So he's still under observation. The last time I heard,
bruised lung is what they said.
Yeah.
So better than
collapse,
a collapsed lung or something more serious. That's painful sounding.
Yeah, painful, and that's a hard hit.
I mean, I've had my ego bruised. I've had my lungs bruised.
Lung bruised. That's a hard hit.
That's
so he's coming
terrible.
full, and Lamar Jackson, he's not a small guy.
He's not small.
Yeah, so you come with speed
Yeah.
and muscle and the force of the,
Especially if it's underneath. If it hits you in the right place, football pads don't have very much protection if it gets you right in the sternum, just below.
Well, and with some of the cardiac stuff, the cardiac stuff last year, that's a concern with a lot of people, and that's probably kind of was in their head, what's going on, not that they were thinking that instantly, especially with the blood, but, wanted to make sure that nothing else was damaged as well.
Better safe than sorry.
Yeah. Anytime you're coughing up blood is not a good thing.
Not a good thing.
Yeah, that's scary. And for the person, if they've never had it, I know I'd be scared if I'm coughing up blood.
Yeah.
I'd be really concerned because every time you see it in the movie, it's not good.
Not good.
So,
no, it's. I'm trying to think what else I saw. There was a wide receiver, Tyler Lockett of Seattle. He had a concussion.
Yeah.
That was. I hate to say mild concussion. I hate that term. That's like mild surgery. It's like. they're all serious, but
I just think it's getting so diluted. That's part of the problem with concussions nowadays.
Yeah.
And like people, it's so commonplace now. It's getting diluted a little, but when you're talking about concussion, you're talking about traumatic brain injury to different degrees. So, mild to severe, still traumatic brain injury. But did you see Jacoby Myers hit?
He had a concussion too, right?
Yeah.
I didn't see it.
So he came across and got hit. Denver Bronco, the Vegas Denver Bronco, and he was having an unbelievable game. I think he
had 2 touchdowns, I saw.
Yeah, he was 9 for 10, 81 yards and 2 touchdowns before this happened. And then
that's too bad.
It looked like an elbow to the head.
Not a dirty play.
It did not look intentional. He got I forget who hit him.
It's such a bang thing in football.
Kareem Jackson. Yeah, I don't think it was intentional. Myers was talking trash. He was doing well. He was having a career game. First week, and he was talking some trash and just jawing it up. Nothing bad. Just like he was feeling himself that game. He was having a great game, and so I'm sure the defense was keying in on him. Anyways, so I'm just gonna make him remember me. Don't come across my side. But I didn't think I watched it a couple times. If you slow it down enough, you could see where the elbow, but I don't think he was like intentionally leading with it. Yeah. I could be wrong.
So those guys, let's talk some sports med on that. There are clients. One has a quote unquote mild. Yeah. One you see is like, at least visually looks a little more aggressive. What's your approach to
that Myers one? If you see it on TV or you see the highlight, he's on his back and he's just holding the ball. That look, like
contracture.
Yeah, and just that posture where he's holding it and not moving. He's like just staring, and just right then you knew something was wrong. And instantly linemen are calling. Everybody's running out there because you can tell that posture now. We've seen it too many times, right?
And the NFL is so vicious.
Yeah,
I wish we could get these guys, if not guaranteed contracts, at least health insurance for life.
For life.
It's It's a multi-billion dollar business.
Right.
And there's not tens of thousands of these athletes. Let's get them health insurance for life. What are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's
disappointing, man. It's really a fucking shame.
And it's nothing new. I mean, this has been going on. It's been going on,
Well, now that things are more documented, people are more well known. And
Junior Seau down here. You watch that documentary, everybody. If you haven't watched that, that's going to be an eye opener to how this affects your life, how concussion post, affects your life. And there's a number of stories like that. He was just one of the most, especially in our area, most prominent. But talking about how to treat, the different mild, in quotes, versus this one that definitely he's out, definitely on protocol. I don't know if the other one was, once your concussion, but you treat them both the same right off the bat. From a more holistic side, we're increasing our water. We're making sure hydration's up, electrolytes, omegas. We're dumping omegas in there, right? That's the essential fatty acid that the brain needs to help heal. So we're making sure that's going on. Rest. We're cutting out the blue light, right?
Light is so important.
And any of the extra stimulus.
Noise,
let the brain calm down. They should not be on their phone, even if they feel like, oh, I'm fine. You don't need that. You just need to, and if you have to get some blue blockers, glasses. They're $5 on Amazon now.
The hardest thing is to do nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
We're so hardwired to always be thinking, always be on a screen. I joke sometimes that my wife just switches screens. She goes from a medium screen on her laptop, which she has multiple that she's on during the day, to her phone if she's checking something, to our plasma TV for entertainment. It's well, shoot. Mm-hmm. Pick your poison.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
But the hardest thing to do, getting back to the concussions, is just do nothing.
Yeah.
Literally, like you said, looking at the phone, that can give you a headache.
Yeah.
Excess noise, street noise, man.
Well, even if it doesn't at the time, like you're saying, it's stimulating those different wavelengths of the brain. So even when you do have downtime, if it's constantly going, you're on the back end when you wake up in the morning, or when you're just taking longer to recover. So you got to be super disciplined, which is hard because when you have a concussion, have some head trauma, you're not thinking straight anyway. So you really have to surround yourself around people that
good people,
that have your best interests and will remind you
and have the experience.
have the experience and understanding to what to do and stay disciplined on doing it for a better outcome. So, yeah. So
along those lines, I want to bring up two things, but there's something that I just can't ignore. It's been bothering me since we started.
What, do I have a booger or something?
No, nothing like that.
Okay.
You look great.
Sorry. Okay, good.
I would tell you. It's that we haven't mentioned the most recent and the most serious injury. You know, I had written down the most impactful of the week and the most serious. I don't know if this is the most serious, but maybe the most impactful. I'd like to change my answer from the Browns offensive lineman Jack Conklin to Aaron Rodgers, who Monday Night Football, fourth play of the game, he takes a snap, and it looked like he was trying to change direction, kind of reverse and pivot, and he got grabbed by the defensive end, I think it was, and he wasn't like whipped around and thrown crazily, but it was a little bit of an awkward sack, I'd say, because he was spinning out of it, and he hurt his left leg. He left the game. He stood up after the sack. I kind of felt like something was wrong because he got sacked and threw the ball at the defender, and I'm like, that's kind of uncharacteristic, but it was like, it was not a, hey, you messed me up. I think he was just frustrated.
Yeah,
like,
the situation.
I know I just got hurt.
Yeah.
And he stood up, and then he looked to the sidelines, and he sat down on his butt and then like rolled on his back. And then they watched the replay, and at first I thought it was maybe his toe because his shoe kind of looked off, but they took him out, took him into the tent, and x-rays were negative, they said. The latest that I heard, which was pretty quick. Yeah. And they said left foot injury. And so he went out on a boot. What's your initial impression, just being,
I was actually interesting. I pulled up here. I was waiting for you for a couple minutes. Sure. You know, actually we got here basically the same time. My dad was updating me, you know, which I loved, you know, because I couldn't watch the beginning of the game.
On it.
Yeah,
like,
Pops
hey,
was on it.
Here's the latest.
So, yeah, and so, you know, it says Aaron Rodgers injured calf. Third play, fourth play. Took him to the locker room, and that's what I had, you know, on a cart, took him off. And then, his update was, that x-ray was negative on ankle. So my dad was on it. So, you know, and I appreciate it. So I called you, and you said you knew. Yeah. So I thought I had breaking news based on my dad, you know, but you beat me to it. So anyways, the frustration, I mean, so much led up to this game for him, right? Yeah. Making a change after how many years with Green Bay, right? Sure. New team, new look, new franchise, you know. So, and in New York, they expect big things out of him, right?
Well, I saw an interview earlier this week where John McEnroe was interviewing him.
Oh my gosh!
And he was saying, "I've been a lifelong Jets fan, and what's your expectation?" He goes, "What am I here for? My expectation is to win a Super Bowl." And he's like, "Come on, like the Jets haven't been to the playoffs since 2010. I think it's the longest streak of any football team in the National Football League without having made the playoffs. 12 years, almost 13 years this year, and." He said, "I'm here to win the championship. My expectation is that we compete for that." And I was just thinking to myself, that's the difference between the mindset of a winner and a mindset of maybe a franchise or a fan base that hasn't won too much. Having been a converted Charger fan, sometimes, you know, I hear, "Oh, here we go again," or "Man, we found another way to lose." You know, and so I thought it was interesting that he brought his mindset. And he's like, "No, I'm here to win a Super Bowl." So. Yeah. To your point, a lot of expectations, right? Right.
On both from New York and put on himself. Yeah. And I think he understands the assignment, and I think that's kind of the frustration. You know, he's put a lot into this, into his career, into his skill set, into his craft, right? And so he expects bigger things than to be taken out fourth play of the game when you know going into a whole week of practice, game planning, meetings, night before, bedtime, thinking it all through, waking up, rolling the plays. I mean, visualization like plus crazy, right? That ankle was not part of the blueprint. That was not
part of the equation,
right? So when it happens and you get derailed, then your next thought is, how fast can I get back in? Let's go figure out how bad this is. Once I know he's a competitor, right. You know, he's going to figure out. He's not the type of quarterback that's going to sit out. He's going to tape it, in my opinion. He'll tape it up. He'll even if you have to strap, you know, whatever on it and get out and play. Battle tested, right? So
well, he's like I was saying,
and he's in New York. They expect him to do that too.
Plus, he's not an average guy, right? Obviously, the leader of the team being the quarterback, but he is the MVP of the league multiple times. He's a Super Bowl winner, and he's also that guy. It's Monday Night Football. He knows what night it is.
Yeah.
He knows everyone's watching TV,
yeah.
and he was probably, in his mind, going to come and slice the Bills up and serve them a big L at home and stake the flag like we're here.
Make a point, statement.
I like that the X-rays were negative. And then my second thought is, well, sometimes if it's a little fracture or something, that might heal faster than soft tissue. But to your point, I think he's about as competitive as they come, just as a witness. And I'm sure he'll be back by the end of the season at some point in time, just based on the fact that the X-rays were negative. Hopefully it's not a big soft tissue injury or, something else. It's hard to say. They keep that close to the vest.
Yep. Well, let's talk about that too. We've been doing this long enough, and ankles are super common for the weekend warrior. We get these all the time.
Sure.
Basketball pickup games, people roll their ankles. Volleyball, I'm involved with a lot of volleyball, roll their ankles all the time. So what happens, they go in, we usually say, hey, go get x-rays right away. That way we know what we're working on. And then they come back negative. And the first thing I tell them, I said, what is the follow-up care? What did they tell you? Nothing, just check in with your GP or your ortho.
Awesome.
I said, okay. So here's what
here's
the reality.
Yeah,
here's the reality. I want you to hear this. If it's not getting better within 10 to 12 days, let's get another x-ray, because sometimes if you have a hairline fracture, it takes up to 10 days to show up on x-ray, because the bone starts to mend and heal, and then you'll actually start see the
radiolucency doesn't show up.
Exactly. And then you'll start seeing where it's actually healing. You'll see a white line there where it's actually mending and healing. So so if they've never heard that, they think in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, if nobody ever sees them, that this ankle sprain is just taking forever, when indeed they could have had a hairline. Sure. And at that point, in 2 weeks after we see a hairline, hey, sure enough, it's not going to necessarily change our treatment, but it's going to say, listen, now you understand. Yeah, and now you understand why it's taking so long, because we would expect it to start feeling better, sooner than this. So at least it gives you a little peace of mind knowing that, one, you're not a baby. You actually did fracture your ankle, and now we will rethink our treatment plan, but let's stay on course. It's already started to heal at this point, so you're kind of out of that, first couple of weeks. So let's move forward.
Yeah, look, I think I remember it was Russell Wilson, the quarterback of Seattle, when he got hurt. There was an article, headlines pop out to get your attention. It was something like, Russell Wilson is getting treatment for 23 hours a day or something. They're like, how's that possible? Like, what's he? Is he not sleeping? It's like, well, you can be sleeping and be getting treatment while you're asleep. There's different things you can use. So I'm sure Aaron Rodgers, who's into all things natural and into his, I don't know how many years he's been in the league. Gosh, 15 years. He's been around long enough to know where to go for his treatments, and I'm sure he has a whole team of people that's going to get him all the latest and most proven treatments to help him get back as soon as possible.
And his dad's a chiropractor too, so he has that alternative thought process too, joint alignment. So whereas a lot of people aren't going to be getting their hips adjusted or their knees adjusted for an ankle issue, he will be in the mindset of, hey, if I'm going to be walking on this thing, my hips are going to be off. It's not helping if I stay, rotated. So let me go in, get adjusted,
the guaranteed
get my
thing,
knee. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, I just think that's important for a lot of people to hear. Is like it's crazy to me, because we're in our world of chiropractic, why people would not get adjusted at the same time, especially in the sports medicine world when we're trying to get these people back.
Important point.
It should be part of their treatment plan with the team. Yeah. How many times when we are not part of the situation, you hear ankles taking way longer than you think, and you think in your head, I know if we were adjusting, because I've been there, done that it will shorten down that window for recovery. And I feel just terrible for the athlete. And it's not that the trainers are doing anything wrong. They just don't know. It's not in their wheelhouse to think about it.
If you don't have that experience.
Right. So it's not that they're doing anything wrong. We just are fortunate to see both sides and be like, you want you want the pelvis to be level. You want to check the tib fibs. You want to check other ankle, all that to allow this other ankle to heal faster. And I think that for anybody listening, if you have an ankle issue that keeps recurring and you haven't had your hips checked and you haven't had your alignment checked, you haven't had your knees checked, let's get on that and
it's
start
important
changing
because it creates imbalances,
Yeah.
I've spoken about my ACL tear. I had a patient earlier today who had an ACL tear as well, right knee, and she was sharing with me just some of her imbalances that she had. Look, I know what's going to happen when you're in a boot. I already know that you're going to tell me that your back hurts.
Right.
It's just a matter of, is it day 2 or is it week 1 or is it week 2? And I've told other people, like, hey, you're wearing that boot. It's necessary. Wear this little booster on your other foot so you don't have this like crazy waddle when you walk, you know, because it does translate all the way up. And I think balance is important. And, you know, the ankle adjustment, even if it's sprained, can be helpful in helping that joint heal quicker, you know?
Yes.
So, you know, we talked a lot about concussions. I did want to bring up 2 quick points. One was about a product I spoke on last week called the Q Collar. And I reached out to the company. I was just asking if they could send me some product that I might be able to give to some of my athletes. I haven't had, you know, 8, 9 concussions and knowing how that affects you. I definitely don't want I hate to see anybody get a concussion, you know, to be honest. But when there's new technology or new product that can enhance or help reduce injuries, I think that's important. So the Q Collar seems to do that. It's a device that you wear around your neck. It goes around the back of your neck like a collar. Think of it as kind of being a hard plastic or elastic kind of situation. And you wear it, and it's almost like headphones, right? Like headphones go around your neck. And what it does is it creates compression on your jugular. It creates jugular compression on your veins,
the internal jugular.
Internal jugular vein. Thank you. And what that's been shown to do is basically reduce damage to the brain. I think they said 77% change, improvement in brain tissue compared to the non-Q collar using group. And so that's such a simple thing, and I've seen a few NFL players wear it, but not everybody. And there's sometimes that I think, man, if I was an NFL owner, I'd almost make this mandatory for my whole team. You know, just as a preventative. It doesn't hinder any athletic performance. It's something you wear on the back of your neck. The science is proven. It's not going to knock you out. It's like something that I think is going to continue to become more and more readily seen.
Yeah, I think they got FDA approval in 2021, so I think you'll start seeing more and more, especially as people are wearing them more. And you know, basically the way it works is with that internal jugular brain, it's bringing blood flow back, you know, out of the brain and down back towards your heart. So it's taking the deoxygenated blood flow down to your heart and to the lungs to oxygenate it and pump it back up to the brain. So if you basically put pressure on that internal and put a little kink into that internal jugular vein, that's basically what it's doing, is it's putting a kink on it to allow the blood to stay up in the brain a little longer. And so basically it adds a protective barrier, more blood flow around the brain, so if you do have some impact, it's cushioning it
less
a little
jostling.
more. So that's how, because basically one thing I learned from Eamon was that your brain is basically the consistency of soft butter.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when you start thinking of that, and when it's sloshing around, and your skull, we see a nice smooth, but inside the skull has rigid edges.
Yeah.
And so if you take the brain, that's consistency of soft butter, and you move it around a little, and it hits those edges, even if you don't have a concussion, you're going to get scarring of those brain and the neuron, you know, the nerves. So basically, if you restrict and put a little kink, just like a little hose, you're going to get backflow, right? So that's what basically this Q collar is doing, is putting backflow back, keeping the oxygenated blood up around the brain longer, you know, without causing you to have issues, right?
It's almost like an airbag, but it's a blood bag for your brain. You know, like you described it really well in that how it protects it and keeps that brain from jostling as much, you know?
So I think it's still kind of weird, right? And like, to me, to be honest, like, I think it's kind of weird. And, but
I wanted to try it. That's why I reached out to him to have him send me a couple.
Glad,
I'm still kind of on a back and forth. The ball's in my court. I need to respond back. But
perfect. Yeah, I'd like to try it too.
The science is interesting. They said it decreases damage to your neurons and axons by over 80%.
Yeah. Wow.
And so you can't make statements like that, and you don't get FDA cleared And, you know, actually I did know one person who used to be on the Chargers last year who wore it. And I just asked him in passing, I don't know him closely. I said, hey, does that bother you when you played? He goes, I don't even notice I'm wearing it.
Yeah, I heard they're pretty lightweight.
Yeah.
They're like lightweight plastic, you know. Yeah, people don't even feel it. And it's not hard pressure. It's just enough to just a little kink, I guess. So, yeah. So, like, why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, as long as it's not affecting. I can see that being
integrated in helmets one day.
Yeah, something.
Almost.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking forward to long-term studies on it. Yeah. But
I'm gonna have him send me one. And we'll try it on your big neck and my skinny little neck, and we'll see what it feels
let's put some helmets on and whack each other.
Okay, let's not do that.
Okay, I'll go first.
I'll lose that battle for sure.
So,
but along those lines, I don't know if you heard. Obviously, last year we talked about Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua and how his concussions were so significant, so dramatic, really. You know, on prime time. Just very scary.
Yeah.
And so this year Tua has a special helmet, different than most people's helmets.
Yeah.
Did you see that at all? Did you get a look at what it looked like or hear anything about that?
I took a look at it, and is he wearing it for the games? I don't know if he's wearing it for the games or if he's just
he was wearing it for the games.
Well, some of the articles I read, I don't know if he decided to wear it. He said the last article I read, he said he wasn't sure if he was going to wear it for the games, but
I don't know why it against the Chargers.
Perfect, yeah. I don't know why you wouldn't. Yeah, I read an article from last week, so but
it's a Vicus, VICIS, Vicus matrix. It's like a microfilament structure that's instead of an air bladder inside the helmet, it's a different type of, I guess, microfilament structure that fits on the inside that reduces the impact, especially if you're tackled and your head whips back.
Yeah.
So in particular, that type of a mechanism of injury.
Yeah.
Is that how you understand it?
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's interesting technology. I think it's kind of space age technology.
You're giving me the side eye like when I used to explain something in school, and you're like, you kind of got that, but you didn't really get that.
Well, no, because the way this new plastic they're using, and this is why I think it's kind of way out there. And a team of engineers and designers are developing it, which is really cool. You know, but they call it like this deformal type technology, meaning that when you get an impact, the impact stays in that location. So like with the current plastic, by staying in that area, it takes pressure off the rest. So you can stay diffused so it's the same kind of terminology, but basically, as you get the impact, it like sucks it in and absorbs that area in that location, so it does diffuse it from the other areas, right? So taking off pressure. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Whereas, and I'm assuming that it then goes back, right? Sure. It doesn't just stay dented. So basically, and they said this technology and for the quarterback is designed in the locations where, like you said, hitting the head on the ground,
the back of the head. When you get backwards.
And so they said something like I saw a stat. 50% of the concussions for quarterbacks were due to ground contact. So half of them were versus. So these helmets were designed more for that type of impact versus a head-to-head contact. Because so like a receiver would have more head-to-head, DB head-to-head,
running back
coming across. Yeah, right. Those kind of. Whereas the quarterback, you would think on the back of the head or the sides, where you're going to get whipped, because that was his where he got all. You know. So I thought it was kind of, deformal. I had never seen that deformal word. That's what they use to describe their shell, and basically, to decrease the severity of the impact.
This is a deformal podcast.
Yeah.
Where else I could see that having some practical use, that type of a mechanism of injury, is for snowboarders.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Like, man, you catch that edge and whop! Like, that's exactly what's happening.
Big time. Yeah, good job. I'm sure they're thinking of that, right?
They probably didn't. Yeah. This is probably
breaking news.
Podcasting. Yeah. We're going to develop this new
market. This day and this time. So I mean, so many.
A lot of uses for it. I just think that year by year, the advancements are at such a rapid pace, more so than they were, just even 20 years ago. And I paused for a second because I've treated a player who played in the league for about 16, maybe 18 years or something.
That's a long
A
time.
long time,
Yeah.
a long time. And I went over to his house for the first time, and on his wall he had rows and rows of game balls, 16 years, and he's an all-pro, and rows and rows of game balls. And he had like a little theater room with his jersey, a couple jerseys, and basically he had like stuff laying around that you'd be like, I'd have this in a case, and it's just laying around,
I've been in lots of homes like that. It's the weirdest thing. It's
like hey, anybody would kill for that
Yeah.
piece of memorabilia, and you just have it in a box in the garage,
or a Brady jersey they got signed after a game, and then they just toss it
on the side.
over the treadmill. It's like, come on.
I'd love to talk to you about those stories
Those are fun.
when we can speak on it. But damn, now I lost my train of thought. What
Sorry,
was I saying?
you were talking about going over to his house.
Yeah. So he had all this stuff there, and what I saw was a helmet, and I said, bro, when is this helmet from? This looks like from like the 70s or something. He said it was from like his second or third year. But this was like 20, maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago or something.
That much.
And so in a decade, that helmet looked to me like ancient. It was heavy and just looked so clunky.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, that's what you like. What?
Yeah,
that's crazy. Compared to now it's so molded.
Yeah.
So just in that much time, the tech has changed.
Yeah.
And
it's only going to continue.
It's only going to continue.
To his helmet, I hope he wore it because it didn't look bad. Did you see it?
I thought it looked sharp.
Yeah, it looked normal. It looked like a cool state of the art. It didn't look weird or like big or anywhere.
Couldn't tell anything.
No, so like I don't know why you wouldn't unless it feels different, or if he's just kind of nervous about this dent technology.
In fact, I know he wore the new one because I remember them saying the helmet's different, the face mask's the same. His face mask, he has the wiring to where it reads 808.
Oh, really?
For the Hawaiian area code. And so they're like, they kept the face mask the same. So it's like, it's open in the middle. So it kind of looks like an 808. Look, I kind of wish he wore his old helmet. He sliced up the Chargers defense and beat us by.
Come on, don't say that. You don't mean that, but I'm just joking.
I just, wish he would have had one more incompletion. Tyreek Hill's the baddest, fastest man on the football field right now. And we played man coverage against him a lot. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not a coach, but, man, I was like, cover that guy, double him.
Please.
Anyways. Well, any last thoughts? I know Monday Night Football is going on. I do have a little anecdote story I'll share with you, but I wanted to ask you if there's anything else on your mind from last week.
Yeah, no, super exciting to start this season. Can't believe it's already been a whole year since we started this, right? And we started it last season for NFL, and now we're back at it doing it again. So kudos to us for continuing it. And I think having the format around the NFL games is kind of good for us as well. But it's been fun. It's been fun staying up on the game, staying up. And now me and you have a little side bet on our weekly, which I didn't do the tally. So we'll have to
tally it next time.
We do.
That tells me that you probably lost.
No.
He's like, I didn't tally it.
No, but one thing on that, I was looking at our score or the scores, and I was surprised how many games there were. Well, there was 4 games that were decided by 1 point.
Oh, okay. That's pretty close.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy, Anyways, I thought that was kind of cool. But anyways, and I did come in second in my DraftKings, so I was excited about that. This week I got some money out of it.
Hey, that's good.
Yeah. So.
And you're a gentleman, too, by the way, for not bringing up that the Raiders won and the Chargers lost. And honestly,
it is not over yet. That was how I was signing off.
I can't remember the last time
I was signing off, but
the Raiders led the AFC West. Can you remember the last time the Raiders led the AFC West? Enjoy this week, my friend. I'm so upset, but it's okay. It's all good. My office manager came in today, and she goes, my daughter wanted me to show you something, Dr. Dhokal. And I said, oh, what's that? And so she's like, she changed my home screen on my phone, and she wanted me to give you a message. And so she hits her home screen and shows me, and it's her in a Raiders hat with the hat pulled down so you can just see the Raiders logo. I'm like, what's the message? And she goes, she wanted you to see what a real team looks like.
Oh,
and I said, wow. I thought she was like a sweet young girl. She's over here spitting fire.
She's a Raider fan.
Week 1.
Sweet young girl. That doesn't.
Yeah. Contradiction of terms. I'd be remiss if I didn't speak on something. 2 people that I've known for a while who are in the NFL. One plays for the Bills, Micah Hyde. One used to play last couple seasons for the Houston Texans, Christian Kirksey. He started his career with Cleveland, was in Green Bay, then with Houston. They both came out in 2014, and I had the pleasure of meeting them, early in their career, and have kind of followed them along. And they're close friends. I believe they went to college together. I should know that. I think they went to University of Iowa, played on the same team, if I'm not mistaken. Might have to fact. This is when we need Steven to fact check us. But they went to college together, entered the league together. They're going into their 10th year this year. So anybody who can play 10 years in the league, I'm like, man, hats off and clap it up to you. That's amazing. But what's really cool is Christian got traded to the Bills this year. So he plays linebacker. Micah plays safety. Micah last year hurt his neck. Remember we were recording our podcast and he hurt his neck? That's why DeMar Hamlin ended up playing. And then he got hurt tragically as well. Luckily he's playing. But Micah's back on the field.
Good.
Monday Night Football, game 1. So hopefully he's playing well and everything's going well for him. But I thought it was just a cool full circle moment for those guys who were college teammates and played 9 years in the league, still are friends, and actually live close together, train together, and now they get to be on the same defense.
Yeah, that's super cool.
I just saw that when I was scrolling through the news, and I said, oh, CK's on Buffalo now? Like, no way.
Yeah,
so
that's fun.
I was just happy for the two of them. Like, how cool would that be? That's like me and you being on the same squad again.
I was going to say, you think we have stories, those guys.
Man, I'm happy for them.
Yeah,
so
that's good.
I look forward to watching them play, and the Bills come out to play the Chargers in a few months. So I'm looking forward to that game too. But shout out to CK, shout out to Micah. I hope you guys have a great, healthy year.
Yes. I'm
excited you guys are on the same side of the ball. Football's family,
Yes.
And those are the moments that make it cool.
Yeah, maybe we'll do our podcast from that game.
That'd be dope.
Yeah.
Do it pregame from the parking lot.
It'd be kind of fun.
I wouldn't mind doing that.
Yeah.
Well, Dustin, thank you for the time.
Thank you, my friend.
I know you drove down, but it's always good to see you in person.
You too.
I appreciate it. We'll do this again next week. In a couple weeks, we have a guest, and so looking forward to that conversation as well. And anything else on your mind before we sign off?
No, let's just have another great week ahead.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, hopefully we entertained you with some stories, educated you with some knowledge, some experience, and we appreciate you listeners, everyone who's tuned in, everyone who's told a friend. If you found this interesting, we appreciate that as well. We're trying to grow our audience and improve our craft, and wishing you a safe and healthy week. We'll be back with you next time. I'm Dr. Dhokal.
I'm Dr. Glass.
And this is the Second Opinion Sports Medicine Podcast. We are signing off. Everybody have a good night. We will talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
Goodbye.